I learned all about movies when I had a 6-inch spike lodged in my skull as a child. Let's talk about Cooties.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Danny G, may you please do your thing.
So this is Have You Seen, in which we talk about a movie that some of us know well and others have just seen for the first time. This week we are talking about the 2014 zombie comedy Cooties, which follows the story of Clint, who is an aspiring writer and is temping as a substitute teacher in his hometown of Fort Chicken, Illinois. One day at the school, it turns out that due to contaminated chicken nuggets, all the fourth graders have turned into zombies and are now attacking each other and the teachers. As he bands together with a group of misfit teachers, they have to find a way to survive the day and survive primary school. What did you think of Cooties?
Okay, at first, my initial reaction was this film wasn't for me. However, after allowing it to marinate, I won't say it wasn't for me anymore because after thinking about it, I was like, okay, you know what? This was cool. I wouldn't watch it again, but I wouldn't say it wasn't for me. Like, I'm just thinking from the perspective of if I went, like, would I be satisfied if I went to go to the cinema to go watch this? So, paying my own money for a cinema ticket. I don't think I would have been underwhelmed because this is pretty much what I'm expecting. Like, it's a dark comedy, slapstick comedy. I thought it was pretty smart. Like, it was not smart, but it was, it made it kind of like fun seeing teachers beat the crap out of students. And you know what I'm saying? There was some jokes as well where I was like, you know what, like, more so humor that was like, you know what, that was funny. So you kind of do get what you're asking for if you're, you know what I'm saying, based on what the film is about. So I wouldn't say I'm the greatest fan of Cooties. I'm definitely not the greatest fan of Cooties. So I've changed my tone a bit. So at first, like I said, okay, this just isn't for me. However, after like just thinking about it, like I need a couple of days to actually think about it. I was like, you know what, this wasn't actually that bad. And it had its moments, and I think it delivered on what it was supposed to do, and it delivered for me in terms of my experience with the film. It's not like I wanted to take it off. It's just there was at times where I felt like it was a bit one note, like especially when it comes to like the performances and the story as well. It felt like I get it as those type of movies. When I say those type of movies, I mean in terms of like the slapstick comedies, kind of like what you're gonna get from them. You shouldn't really expect much of a story in a way. That's how I feel when it comes to these type of movies. I feel like it's more of a mixture of different elements that make the film rather than one specific thing. Like, for example, a drama film, you would expect its main selling point is the story itself. Whereas, like I said, this one has got different elements of different things, which makes it a good movie. So for me, I think with these ones, I didn't really expect too much from the story, even though I wanted a bit more story and I just wanted to kind of like, just get into the story a bit more, which I found a bit hard because obviously this, the immaturity when it comes to these type of movies does kind of like put me off a bit. That being said, it had its moments. And I love zombie post-apocalyptic type of movies, and obviously movies where there's a group of people trying to fight for survival in like an enclosed environment. Many times they were in a classroom and they were just trying to find their way out to survive, and that's kind of what made me stay. If this was any other day where I was just off my own choice, off my own accord, and I still would have stayed because of the storyline. So yeah, I'll say overall it's 50-50. 50-50. I think that's fair to say.
So I suggested this movie because it's one of those feel-good, low-effort, enjoyable movies that I think has a little bit more going on than what people kind of give it credit for based on the trailer or based on, if you just read reviews, they will basically tell you this is just a failure of a movie. Like it attempts a joke and doesn't quite stick the landing, and there's not enough going on. But to me, it's kind of in one category with things like Rapture Palooza, which we talked about a few months ago, and there's a few other comedies like this where it has an idea and it kind of hangs the entire movie on this one idea, which is that you've got primary school teachers trying to defeat zombie children, right? Their students have turned into zombies that are trying to eat them. That is basically what drives the movie, and then all the jokes and characters and set pieces are kind of suspended from that basic idea. Right, like that's basically what this movie is, and then in the between you've got a bunch of lines that may or may not land depending on your sense of humor and all of that. I'm not going to claim it's a hidden gem or a masterpiece that's underappreciated. It's just a solid movie that's a good time, and sometimes that's all you need from a movie. And this movie made something like $580,000 at the box office. It doesn't have a reported budget. It has around 40% on Rotten Tomatoes for both reviewers and audiences. So everybody is kind of 50-50 on it. 12 years later, it's not a hidden gem cult classic that people swear by, this is just kind of fine for a lot of people. One of the reasons I suggested it is that, like you said, like survival movies, especially things involving zombies or a post-apocalyptic type of setting, is kind of your thing. And so I was curious whether or not this worked for you. After your summary, I'm still not entirely sure what didn't work for you on as you were watching it, but then kind of grew on you over time, right? Like what is it that didn't quite work, and in what way did you change your mind, or in what way did it kind of grow on you?
I already have a pet peeve when it comes to like a horror setting and when like the main characters are children. I just find it so hard to get into it. Like I haven't even watched Stranger Things yet, and I really want to watch Stranger Things, but I just even like It Dairy or something like that. Is it called It Dairies? Welcome to something Dairy, but it's
Welcome to Derry or something like that.
Welcome to, yeah, something like that. Even like I've watched a couple of episodes of it and it was cool so far, but I just still find it so hard just to kind of like feel that horror when kids are involved. I don't know why. It's just something I'm like, well, they're not really gonna, it's not gonna be like an Evil Dead movie, even though there were kids in the Evil Dead movie. But anyways, the main character was still an adult. So like I said, I find it hard to get into series with that type of setting and kids are like the main actor. That's number one. Mixed with kind of like, with these slapstick type of comedy type of films, it can come across very immature in terms of like the way that the character performs. Mixing those two together was kind of like that create internal conflict for me. Because like I said, one side of things, I love the story. I love I like the premise. Don't get twisted, because I think, turning a playground into kind of like an infested flesh-eating arena in a way and trying to make it out of that arena. That was cool. So I like the premise. And like I said, I love the storyline of post-apocalyptic and stuff like that. That's on one side why I liked it. But then the internal conflict came from, okay, slapstick comedy. I'm not always a big fan of them because they come across very immature. That's number one. Number two, or like I said, it was the whole kids thing. You know what I'm saying? Kids being like the main actors stuff, the main characters in the movie. So that's why I think that was what was causing me in the beginning to be like, this just really isn't for me. But like I said, afterwards, I just needed time for it to marinate. I was like, you know what? All in all, it wasn't that bad. I managed to get through it. I didn't feel like I wanted to take it off, even though the immaturity at times was annoying me.
And in what way did it grow on you?
It grew on me because I think there was a couple of moments where, because like when I thought about it, I was like, they kind of did cross the line in a couple of moments, like setting the kids on fire was one. One joke that they made, I was like, with the whole the black kid joke where one of the teacher was like, oh, you're not, once he realized that he wasn't infected, he was like, oh, you're not like the rest. And I'm not just saying that because you're black, because obviously he was the only black kid in the classroom. So I was like, okay, that was funny. And also teacher culture as well. So I thought about it, I was like, you know what? It's kind of cool, because I don't know if I've seen a film. Can't remember. I don't know if I've seen a film where teachers are kind of like in that type of setting. So kind of like seeing teacher culture, what teachers will be like in that type of setting, and being familiar with teacher culture. It was kind of, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. A mixture of all of that. I said to myself, yeah, actually, this was pretty cool.
So you mentioned the violence against the children, right? So normally this is completely taboo in movies. You do not show children get hurt, and you certainly don't see them get killed. You certainly don't see them be attacked by the heroes, right? And here, that's the entire joke, right? Like that the zombies are children, and not just children, but the students. And so the teachers who are basically always trying to save these children and help them now have to kill them, right? And there's some fairly gory violence in this where people get flung across rooms and get hit by baseballs in the face and baseball bats and whatever. Like the movie does not hold back when it comes to that, right? So did that work for you? And is there a line where it becomes poor taste?
Yeah, that's why I said, like, after thinking, that was one of the things I was like, you know what, this was pretty cool because they did cross the line. So they just crossed the line when it comes to that. I didn't really think, after thinking about it, like you said, like you kind of think of it and you don't really see violence against children like that. Well, it's actually, but that's in 2025, you know what I'm saying? So it's been, I don't know, before 2025, I don't know if there was like, a lot of films where there was violence against children shown. So this wasn't as graphic. Well, setting kids on fire is pretty graphic. So I would say
it is pretty graphic.
Yeah.
And they take baseball bats to the face and they pull each other's, like in one scene when the girl, the first, who's kind of patient zero because she's eaten the infested chicken nugget, one of the boys pulls her pigtail and just comes right off with the bloody scalp. That's a cool shot. But when you said it crossed the line, you just mean it did the thing that most movies don't do, right? Not as in it went too far.
Well, I don't mean it went too far for me, but I meant it crossed what you said. So it crossed the line in terms of just like the movie, like rules within the movie industry, as in like you don't hurt the kids. So they definitely crossed that line.
Is there a point where it becomes too much?
For this genre, I don't think so. It depends on what type of film. But if it's like, for example, if it's like an action movie, then yes. Because even though we do know action movies are violent, it's got more of a serious tone to it. Whereas this one is dark humor, which is parallel to like comedians who, comedians, they're, what I'm saying, they've got all types of ammunition when it comes to dark comedy, and the type of jokes that they make is parallel to what we saw. So when it comes to slapstick comedy and dark humor, dark comedy, it gets a pass.
Yeah, for me, I think the line would be something like torture, where it just becomes sadistic. But it's just about an action scene, and some of the characters are children. And like we had this in They Will Kill You, right? There's a scene where one of the cultists is a child, and the main character punches like a 12-year-old boy, and he flies across the room, right? Which in 2026 still had shock effects, right? And that's kind of why I'm bringing this up, because there are very few movies that actually go there, right? Like they always find a way to keep the children safe, right? Just by cutting away or by contriving a situation where there are no children around, right? And like in an action movie, you will never see, like, you might see like a dead child, like a mother holding like an injured child or something, but you will not see like deliberate violence against children, especially not by the heroes, right? Like the villains might get there occasionally, but like a lot has to happen before that happens. The heroes will never touch children, right? And here, that's the entire joke, and that was like a transgressive joke in like 2014. But even in 2026, when a movie goes there, it's there for shock value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I just find that interesting, because personally, I don't think there is a line in terms of like there shouldn't be like categorical taboos, right? Like it has to be something very, like if you do body horror and there's a child involved, then maybe I would be squeamish about that. But if it's just an action scene, essentially, especially if there's monsters involved and there's no, like the main characters are not just going after children just because, right? Like there's nobody home anymore. Like in the same way that in a zombie movie, if somebody shoots a bunch of zombies, they're not guilty of mass murder, right? Like in the same way. So in my head, personally, I don't have a line like that. I also don't have it in terms of violence against animals, for instance. Like if characters shoot a dog, like there's a lot of people who will drop the movie at that point. They will not watch it. I always found it a little bit silly, because it's a movie and it's a story, and just categorically saying I will not watch an animal get hurt, it seems like a strange hill to die on. It's like I've never quite understood why that is so sensitive, and children are kind of in a similar bucket, right? Like it is something you just don't do. I get not doing it because of ratings or because you want like a general release, or you want streamers to pick it up or whatever. Like from a marketability standpoint, I kind of get it. From an artistic and moral standpoint, I don't really see the problem with it. But but most people do. And a movie doing something like this is picking a fight.
But I think it's because obviously innocence that they come with. So in a way, it's like they don't really want that innocence to be exploited. Don't get me wrong, with the animals, that's something which I 100% agree with as well. But at the same time, like I do know that a lot of people are animal lovers. They are heavy. When I tell you they are heavy on protecting animals, like they will place an animal's life above humans. Like if you read comments on videos like on social media when it comes to like just like animal content and the stuff, like when it could be like video where animals are attacking humans and stuff like that, and the justifications that some of the animal lovers will write underneath that video is absolutely crazy. So I'm not surprised with people kind of like dropping the film when it comes to animals. When it comes to kids, I understand where you're coming from, but I think with that one is the whole thing about innocence, really. I just think for me, it depends on the setting. Like you said, like torturing a kid, I don't think I'll be down to watch that at all. I remember there was actually a scene in The Mummy. The scene in The Mummy where they ended up kidnapping the daughter, and then they actually showed us over the cassette, the VHS tape. That scene kind of made me feel uncomfortable, but in a good way. Like that setting there, it fits well with what's going on. So I think stuff like that, as long as it makes sense for what's happening to the kid, what's happening to the child, then cool. But if it doesn't make sense and kids are just out here getting shot and for no reason, and then I'm like, yeah, that's a bit like, I'm still gonna watch it, but I'm gonna still feel like uneased. But like you said, like if you're shooting in a crowd and of zombies and children end up getting shot, then it's not fine in reality. But in in fictional movie sense, what'd you expect, bro? Like it's the whole crowd of zombies running at you. You're not gonna aim for the adult zombies. Like no, you're gonna smoke everyone. So,
but honestly, I don't recall a zombie movie where there were children in the crowd. It just doesn't happen.
Walking Dead.
Are there scenes where there are child zombies? I've seen like the first 2 seasons or something like that, like 10 years ago. So I'm not claiming that there is none, but it's unusual.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't think there is. Whenever there is a child that's a zombie, then there'll be like a close up shot of, that zombie child. But generally, when there's like a whole herd running at you, is they're all adults usually.
I think now that I mention it, I think in the earliest episodes of Walking Dead, there's a scene where Rick, I think is his name, he encounters a single zombie, and it's like a 15-year-old girl with like her lower body entirely gone, and she's just crawling through the grass. So that would be a minor, right? Not like child, teenager, not quite the same, but that is there specifically for shock value. But if you have like a horde of like 50 zombies, it's not like 5 of them are children, and the heroes just double tap them in the same way. This is like a very long-winded way of kind of approaching this, but I'm just bringing it up because this is the joke that they built the movie on, and that was the initial idea that they had, and said, okay, what if zombie apocalypse in a primary school and the teachers have to kill their students? Isn't that funny? I said, yeah, it is. All the different ways they go into, like with the baseball bats and the baseball launcher and all of that, they really milk that. And especially like the end sequence where there's like this playhouse that's infested with zombie children, and then just burn it down. And as the heroes drive away into the night, you can hear the sound of dying children. Like that's the end of the movie, right? So this movie really leans into it, and I enjoyed that, mostly because it's like, I don't care about things being transgressive for its own sake, but it's basically like a hold my beer moment, right? Where somebody says, oh, you can't show violence against children. And then the people making this movie said, watch me. Right? To me, this is kind of in one category with the toilet in Psycho. Remember that? Where Psycho, like at the time, in the late 60s, I think it was, you couldn't show a flushing toilet because it was considered obscene. And so Hitchcock trolled the censors by writing the plot in such a way that you had to show the toilet being flushed. Because at one point, a character flushes evidence on the toilet, and you cannot tell the story without that shot. And so you have to leave in the flushing toilet. It is a little bit like this, right? Like, I'm obviously reaching just a little bit here just to make a point, but it is kind of that, right? Where there's this rule that of something you can't do, and then somebody just does it and shows how dumb the rule is, and how nothing bad happens because somebody made a zombie movie where the zombies are children. I just kind of enjoy like that aspect of the joke.
Yeah, but I don't think they would have made this film if like I said, if it had a serious tone to it.
Oh, sure, yeah, this is a comedy because of this.
Would you want to see a film like this though? That was an actual serious movie?
Absolutely, yeah. Like, you could make a version of this with the same basic plot that is completely serious, and it would be very tragic. Can you imagine? Teachers don't do the job because it pays so well, right? They do the job because it's their calling to educate and raise these children. And if you are a teacher, thousands of children go through your care, and you meet them decades later, and they will tell you how much you improved their life and how they are today, who they are because of what you did. That is why people become teachers. And then imagine being put into a situation where a teacher has to kill a student.
That would actually be crazy.
Like, you can actually make a serious, heavy drama that is very disturbing just by exploring that idea, right? Or you could do like set it in a hospital and the patients are the zombies, or in a retirement home and the elderly are the zombies. Like any permutation of this idea.
Yeah, they've done that movie. It was a zombie movie. I think the movie was called Old People.
Of course it is. I'm gonna have to check that out now. I think my Netflix account is still live for a week or so. I'm gonna check that out.
And I think it was based in a town rather than an actual hospital.
No, but like this idea of upending kind of the social contract in this way, because it happens in a zombie context, I think is interesting. And like, you can turn it into a comedy like Cooties did, or you can turn it into like a serious drama that really gets to people, depending on how you play it. I think that's absolutely on the table. And I just think movies should not be limited by what's polite. They should explore kind of the creative idea and then kind of live with the consequences. Like, if you make a movie like that, it's going to appeal to fewer people than something safer, like The Walking Dead or something. But it should absolutely be allowed to be made.
I'm literally having all sorts of ideas in my mind in terms of how the film, because I feel like this would hit home. Not even hit home, but it would be deep. Because like you said, teachers change students' lives when they grow up. So I can imagine, you know what I'm saying? I can imagine the relationships that certain teachers will have with certain students, and just the closeness, and then being in a situation where you're going to have to actually kill them. I could just, and in a serious setting, when I say serious setting, I mean just the tone of the movie and the genre of the film, like a serious drama, like you said. That would be amazing to watch. But at the same time, I'm just imagining the reaction from the audience, and I think it would be a mixed bag.
And I think that would be genuinely challenging, right? Like I don't think there's a good artistic reason or moral reason for why you can't do that, but people would feel there's something wrong with it.
Yeah, that's a shame.
But like, isn't that what art is supposed to do, right? Like we're constantly told about how important art is and about how it pushes boundaries.
Mm.
So make this movie, you cowards, is what I'm saying.
Oh my god, I felt like that was directed at me as well.
I mean, go for it. Like I'll totally buy a ticket. But you know what I mean? Making people uncomfortable in that way, I think, is a good thing when it comes from movies. Pivoting a little bit into teaching. So we kind of touched on this, that the allegory in this is very clearly about teaching, right? So the children, like before the outbreak, the children are awful to the teachers, the parents are hostile, the school won't have their back, and the characters cannot shut up about how important teachers are and how much it means for them to be teachers, right? When they're kind of in this basement preparing to break out and they're kind of under siege, like the children are prowling, like the halls and all of that. They have like this extended dialogue about how important it is to be a teacher, right? And like Clint is a teacher, but is kind of in denial about it, right? Like he wants to be something better. He wants to be a writer. But throughout the movie kind of comes to realize that being a teacher is not only what he is or could be, but has been for a while. And he's kind of realizing that being in denial about that is kind of silly and embarrassing. So there's a whole bunch of different angles here where it's about being a teacher and it's about how society treats teachers, right? And here they're literally being eaten alive by the people they are supposed to help, right, in the form of the children. If you talk to teachers, like I come from a long line of primary school teachers, I think you don't have any teachers in your family, right?
Well, I do, but not anymore. As in, like, they're not teachers anymore.
You can't just leave it like that.
Yes,
That sounds like something horrible happened.
No, my bad. They're just not teachers anymore. They switch professions.
That's too bad. Ask anybody who's a teacher for any amount of time and who isn't. Like, I've had teachers who were just there because they couldn't do what they wanted to do. I had a music teacher in like seventh grade who was constantly telling us how bullshit everything is, and he clearly wanted to be a real artist, and he couldn't cut it, so he became a music teacher. And he, like, with everything he did, he was broadcasting how stupid this all was, and he was just handing out like A's just for showing up and saying the dumbest things. Like he would ask us bullshit questions, and if you gave a bullshit answer, he would give you an A. So teachers like that exist, right? And I've had terrible teachers. I had a chemistry teacher once who mentally could not handle teaching. She would hide in like the supply room, like in the back of the science wing, and she would just not show up because she couldn't handle it. And if she was substituting because like for your regular teacher, you knew you had a free lesson because she was not going to show. So I've had some terrible teachers, but I've also had some really good teachers. And the ones who actually care about their profession will tell you that it's the most meaningful thing you can do, and they will devote their entire lives, right? Like their entire working lives to improving the lives of these children. And that includes dealing with like hostile and aggressive children. And that includes dealing with parents who are hostile, who basically don't want you to do your job, and who take any attempt to help their child as a personal insult and that sort of thing, or who are just outright unreasonable. And school administrators will often not support their teachers and hang them out to dry. And then you kind of have to do what the parents say, because a parent complaining is apparently the worst thing that can happen. Ask anybody who knows a teacher or has been a teacher, and they will tell you stories like this, right? Like this is not like one place or one person's experience. This is everybody. That is something that is absolutely in this, right? Like these characters are experiencing something along those lines, like that reality, right? Like when Clint comes to the school and everybody abuses him, and the vice principal is just completely ineffectual. He basically just, when a student is like, when Patriot, the nightmare student, is aggressive towards him, Clint basically says, I need to discipline this kid. What can I do? And the principal says nothing. You're not allowed to do anything. Just take it. Those are all things that ring true if you know teachers. It's just what I'm saying.
That is true. And I kind of do feel it for them as well. And because obviously it brings me back to school days, and it's like, I just feel bad how I acted with certain teachers. I wasn't a terrible student, but I think everyone could agree that when it comes to like substitute teachers especially, you always took the mickey. You know what I'm saying? You took advantage.
In fourth grade, I was in a class of 3 students. I was kind of like in an overseas school. It was a very small school, and at the time, like our class size varied over the years depending on who joined or who left. But in fourth grade, we were 3 people, and we once made like a new English teacher cry in under half an hour.
Damn. We made one teacher cry as well, but damn, you lot done it in under half an hour? Flipping hell.
And it was 3 of us. It wasn't like if 30 students are rebelling against you, anybody can reach a breaking point where you just
Yeah.
can't handle it anymore. There were 3 of us.
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of them ones where, like you said, the way that the teacher responds that you can't do anything about it, which is true, and then it follows with the teachers beating the crap out the students. So it's kind of poetic in a way.
We once had a like a student teacher, like as in somebody who was studying to be a teacher, and she just came from her seminar, and she showed up with like a Buddhist instrument that she would like a metal bowl that she would ring in order to make us calm down. It didn't calm us down. We just ignored her. And she just completely despaired because everything she had been told in her training was complete nonsense. Like it had nothing to do with how to discipline 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
Even in that situation, I felt a little bit bad, but I also didn't like her very much because she was doing this like nonsense all the time that was straight out of some textbook or some some seminar or something.
Yeah.
Like she was not having a good time with us.
Yeah, I can imagine. But bro, when I say beating the crap out of the students, I mean in this film. I don't mean in real life. No teacher in my school ever beat the crap out of no student. Wait, did they? Well, there was an event where a student slapped the teacher's head, and I didn't even expel him. He was still in school. So yeah, I'm sure this film will hit home for many teachers. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them felt not satisfaction, but they're like, ooh, a couple of the scenes where you're beating up the children, especially the children that caused so much trouble. Like that. What was that kid's name? That the nuisance.
Patriot.
Yeah, him. So I can imagine that scene was you felt satisfaction when obviously they ran him over with the car near the end. That scene, yeah. Even for me, I was like, this kid's got to get it. He has to get it. There's always that one kid that's, like everyone's, of course, you have a class, like you said, usually in the classroom, you're all depending on the teacher, you're all misbehaving, but there's just that one kid, maybe even two, that like kind of like go over the top, and you're like, damn, like even you're like, damn, just chill, bro. Like,
and I wish this movie kind of was a little bit smarter and a little bit like took the metaphor just a little bit further. But it's definitely there. That idea underpins the entire movie and all of the characters. And most of the characters are some version or some answer to the question of what is it like to be a teacher or what is being a teacher like. Teachers especially are kind of venerated in movies a lot of the time, right? Like there's this whole genre of the hero teacher who comes in to fix these broken kids just through pure empathy and compassion and skill, right? And they end up being improved by the end just because of the efforts of the teacher. And here, they are not like this, right? All of them are kind of screw-ups, and they're not what they're supposed to be, and they're not, I'm not sure how to put it, but they're not heroes, and they're not sophisticated, and they're not great at what they do, right? They have no control over their students. They can't do anything. They don't know very much. Like they kind of just muddle through, and they do care. Like most of them do care about being a teacher, but they are bad at it. Like they do not, in fact, have achieved control over their students, and they're not shaping them, right? I think Lucy is the one who seems to be in good control over her students. All the others are kind of just trying to survive in some way. I have a feeling.
That's why I didn't really like, because I wanted there to be a bit more when it comes to the teachers, and I wanted each teacher to kind of like represent different type of teachers, if that makes sense. Obviously, you'll have different types. You have like the cool teacher, the teacher that's always stressed, the teacher that's funny, the teacher that's always angry. Do you know what I'm saying? Like in a real school setting. So with this movie, it felt like they all, not all of them, because like you said, Lucy, her personality was kind of ditzy as well, because they all did feel like ditzy and comedic. All of them were pretty much comedic, and they have to be in this type of genre, but they didn't have like differences in personalities and character which I wanted to see. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted each of them to have their own type of character to represent a different type of teacher.
I do think there's a little bit of that there, right? So Clint is the substitute teacher, and he wants to be a horror writer, and he's terrible at it. Like everything he does is just procrastination and awful, and he's never going to be a published author. But he's in denial about being one, and about how he's actually a teacher, but he says and tries to make himself believe that he is just doing this for the paycheck at the moment. But any day now, his book will be finished, and then he will be a real author. And then we've got Wade, who is the gym teacher, who is kind of this macho tryhard, right? He has a very high opinion of himself and about how tough and cool he is, but he's compensating for how awful he is with his massive car. And he, like in that scene when he's shooting basketball hoops, he misses all of them. Like, he's just bad at what he does. And then we've got, what's her name, Rebecca, who is she's kind of this born-again culture warrior who has this victim complex about being persecuted by the government because she's not allowed to teach creationism in her classroom. And her entire classroom, like her entire lesson, is basically her complaining to the students about how unfair this is. But number one, she never does anything about it. Like, she doesn't protest, she doesn't try to effect any change. And she's just taking it out on the students who cannot talk back. And also, she's just soapboxing the entire time. She's just talking about what's on her mind and what she thinks is right. She doesn't care about this, like, at least in the beginning sequence, she doesn't care about the students at all. And I've had teachers like this, like people who just talk about what's on their mind and they do not care about actually teaching anything. That is a version of a teacher that I recognize. And then we've got the autistic teacher. Is it Doug? I think so, right? He's the science teacher who is some version of on the autism spectrum. And he kind of knows a whole bunch of science, but he's a terrible teacher. He can't connect to his students because he can't connect to anybody else. And I've had teachers like that too, who clearly knew a lot or enough, but couldn't teach. And that is also like an archetype of bad teacher. And it kind of goes on like this. Like, all the different teachers, I think, are some version of this. Like, they're not necessarily how to be a teacher, but more about how not to be a teacher. They are all kind of stuck in their little bubble, and they do not live up to their potential, and they don't try very hard, and they are not useful to their students. Like, they are not good teachers in that way. I think they become that over the course of the story as they kind of get a reality check of what actually matters, and when they're actually responsible for the 2 or 3 children that are not infected and that are dependent on being protected by their teachers. But they, like, initially, they are not good teachers, any of them, I don't think. Unless I'm missing somebody, but like the vast majority of them are kind of broken in one way or another, and the principal is just as ineffectual. Like, nobody is doing his children a service in the beginning. Not that they would be very receptive to it, but also not many people are trying. Like, it's a teacher's job to try and overcome the indifference of their students, right? Like, that's half the job, and none of them are any good at that.
Do you think the head teacher getting killed off so quickly had a purpose to it, or was it just a thing to allow the other teachers to activate their storylines?
Well, it kind of means that the teachers are on their own, right?
Does that kind of like add to the overall message of the film then?
I would say so, that you, like, as a teacher, you cannot rely on the administration. Like, they will not have your back, they will not take over, they will not be in charge. You have to do this yourself. Like, whatever positive thing you want to do in your classroom, you have to do it yourself. And that is something teachers will tell you.
Wouldn't it have been more effective for him to be alive and demonstrate that while he's alive? So it could have been portrayed in scenes where they're asking him for help, like leadership, like, okay, what to do next? But then he would always be kind of like thinking for himself in a way, or it might just, or it could have been presented in a different way, but that's just an example.
You could do that, but I think the fact that he doesn't lead, he doesn't take charge, and he's not in control of the crisis, and he dies immediately or very quickly, I think all underlines this idea of how useless this guy is. Any other impressions you got of the movie?
It's kind of hard to say, because for me, but yeah, I don't think there is any, because like I said, with these type of films are very, well, I find them very simple. Like, there's not much to it besides the comedy and the premise. So I already felt 50-50 about this, so I'm just finding it very hard to find more stuff that I could have potentially liked about the film. Not even potentially liked, just more about the film that did anything for me.
A lot of the movie lives from kind of the character interactions and from like the one-off lines that drive how these characters interact. And a lot of it has to do with kind of the image they want to project and how they're very insecure and uncomfortable in their lives, and they kind of find a role in the crisis, right? Like, I think that is kind of what a lot of this movie is about. And so, like, for instance, the entire rivalry between Clint and Wade over Lucy, that is something that kind of slots into that, right? Because up until that point, Clint would never have had the courage to act on any of his feelings, right? Because I think he clearly had a crush on her when when they were in school, and so he doesn't take it well that a jerk like she's now with a jerk like Wade. That is something that is there, and that is one of the if you read reviews of this movie, they will say like there's no character arcs in this, like everybody is just a one-off joke, and Clint kind of has a character arc, right? Like he's kind of a slacker, he's kind of stuck in a rut. He's uncomfortable in his own skin, and he doesn't have the courage to do anything about it. And by the end of it, I think he's arrived at a different place. And Wade is similar, where he's kind of a poser. He talks a big game, but he can't actually do anything. He's not good at anything. But in the end, he kind of shows up to save the day. And like one thing I'm a little bit ambivalent about is about how he has this heroic sacrifice, which I think is the intended end to his character arc. And then he shows up again in the end, like with this big fight scene, right, where he kind of burns down the playhouse full of children and saves the day in that way. But I think the idea that this blowhard loser who can't do anything right ends up sacrificing himself so that his friends, who an hour ago he wouldn't have called friends, can get away and survive. That is a character arc, like that's character growth, right? And that's a good ending to the story, I think.
I feel like the reason why critics feel that way is because of the abrupt ending. I will actually agree with you that they do have a character arc, but because there were plots that kind of like felt like it was left hanging, which makes you think, okay, there's a potential sequel. There would have been a potential, you would have thought there could be a potential sequel the way that it ended, but to find out there's no potential sequel as fast forward into present time. So it's like, okay, so if there was no intended sequel for this film, then number one, it was an abrupt ending, and number two, I understand why critics will feel that there was no character arc based on that reason, because like I said, there were certain storylines which just there wasn't really like a resolution. Like you said, with, I forgot the two guys' name, but they were fighting for Liz's love. What's gonna happen with that storyline? I don't think they mentioned where they were driving off to next. There was a few things I was like, the story was left hanging.
So, a couple of things about this. One, I think the character arcs end when they escape the school, because that is the part where they get their act together and where they have their growth moments and where they have to work together and where they overcome the threat. Like, in my view, that's where the movie ends. I think it doesn't come as a shock to anybody when I tell you that the original ending was different and the studio made them reshoot the ending. In the ending as it is in the movie, they drive away from the school and they get into the neighboring town, the one where it's been established that they hate each other. I think the neighboring town's motto is, at least we're not for chicken, something like that. And they drive into like a restaurant, which is kind of like this Chuck E. Cheese type of restaurant with birthday parties, and then there's like a play area. First of all, on TVs in a shop window, they find out that this is a pandemic. It's everywhere. The tainted chicken nuggets have been sold everywhere, and the entire country is experiencing the same thing. So there's no safe place to go. And then they kind of take refuge in this restaurant, and the entire thing is infested with zombie children, which I think is a really cool sequence where it's like this, I don't know what you call it, right? But it's like this play area that is like where people can climb through tubes and whatever. It's all full of zombie children that are just laughing in the shadows, and it's very creepy and very cool. And then Wade shows up, having survived his heroic sacrifice, and he has some cool lines like nap time, mother effers, and I give you an F for FU, that sort of thing. Like some cool lines. It makes me smile every time I see it, but I have to kind of ring fence it off from the rest of the movie, because as an ending, it makes no sense. It's just there because they had to change the ending, they had to make a new ending, and they just put in something cool so that people kind of feel good as they walk out of the cinema or like as they finish the movie. But character-wise and story-wise, it has nothing to do with what came before. And the reason for that is that in the actual ending, they drive off in the woods and they find this campfire, like in an abandoned camping ground. And they basically sit around the fire and they find some food, and they basically talk about what they've learned that day and how Clint especially realizes how wrong his life has been, and he actually throws his manuscript into the campfire and says, I'm a teacher now and have been for a long time. And that is a much better ending. And then like a group of zombie Girl Scouts comes out of the woodwork and attacks them. And that's kind of the end of the movie. So I think much better ending. I have no idea why they insisted on changing it, especially since the new ending, just as a scene, it's kind of fun, but it's nonsense story-wise, right? Whereas the actual story actually gives a more conclusive ending to especially Clint's story, where he comes to realize that he has been a teacher the entire time, and he is able to transcend his fantasy of being a failed writer. So That is kind of there, and I think that really hurts the movie. But I think if you consider the end of the story to be when they break out of the school, I think that works much better.
That makes sense. Unfortunately, that's not what they gave us, so it's hard to forget what you've witnessed.
Yeah, so that is kind of like emblematic of this movie, right? Where it's a fun idea, it's got some cool moments, and there is real character stuff here, right? Like these characters are not just cardboard cutouts in the way you would get from like an average zombie movie. I think they have more going on, but then in its realization, it's very flawed and very muddled. It's not hard to imagine how to do this better, right? Like how to like bring these character conclusions to a better ending, or like drive the themes a little bit further so it's a little bit clearer and goes to more interesting places. As fun as this movie is, as an uncomplicated watch, I think it has the potential to be a little bit more than that, and they never quite got there. And I think that is part of why a lot of the reviews are so bad and why people are kind of writing off this movie. And I think you can simultaneously enjoy a movie based on what it is, while at the same time complaining about how it would not have taken much for this to be much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that.
So, any other thoughts on Cooties, or shall we wrap it up?
Only thing I can think of is remembering that I used to use Cooties back in school. I didn't know it's had such a. It's crazy. You'll say things and do things back in the day, and you won't realize where it comes from. We used to use the word term Cooties back in the day in school, whenever someone was sick or just So it was pretty fun watching this movie. There was something else that I could resonate on when it comes to this film. Well, cool. And it's cool turning that idea into like some zombie affection. So yeah, that's I'll commend it for that. But yeah, I think we should probably go to last thoughts. For me, still feel 50-50 about it. However, it is kind of like enlightening for the things that I did miss that Daniel did bring up during this conversation. And it is commendable. And I feel like there's certain things I do understand, especially with the ending. Maybe if it ended that way, it could have been a bit more better for me. Who knows? But overall, for what I'm saying, it's very limited because like I said, I still feel 50-50 about this movie. So I'll just kind of be repeating what I've said throughout, today's discussion. But it was a cool experience. I like the fact that they kind of went daredevil when it went to smoking the kids. I liked the unique premise. Yeah, it was cool. I'm not mad at what I watched.
For me, this movie is not so much a hidden gem as it is an uncut diamond, in the sense that the idea, I think, is there. A whole bunch of ingredients are there. The characters are there, at least in their beginning. It just needs a bunch more polish. Like, restore the original ending just to start with and just polish it a little bit, and you've got something quite fun. But I think just as it exists, I think it works. Like I think it has an idea, and it pulls off that idea, and it's unique, right? Like it's not like the same, like especially in the zombie genre, you see the same thing over and over, the same characters, the same locations, the same beats. And this is not that, right? Like this takes the idea of zombies, and like zombie comedies are a genre unto themselves. And this stands out even in that field where it is just its own thing. And I kind of like it when a movie just has an idea and has the courage to be its own thing, which isn't kind of in conflict with having to have changed the ending into something more generic and something a bit lamer. But I think the bulk of the movie is very much its own thing and unique and distinctive. And I like that. And just on its own, it's, I think, an enjoyable watch. And it kind of gets pretty close to being what it wants to be. I think that is more than can be said about most movies. And so for that reason, I think it's a little bit underappreciated. And I think people should cut it a little bit of slack, while at the same time recognizing where it falls a bit short of its potential. But honestly, like I've watched this movie a bunch of times and I've never regretted it. So I think it's totally worthwhile.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning into today's discussion.
So if you've come this far and you liked what we do, please tell a friend. And if you hate what we do, please tell an enemy.
All right, guys, you've heard it here first, and we will catch you next time. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.